in the blockchain space right
Exactly. And for this deep dive, we're really focusing on Apertum. It's described as a next generation layer one blockchain, and it brings together several pretty significant components. It's built as a subnet on Avalanche, features what they're calling deflationary tokenomics, and it's guided by a sophisticated DAO governance model.
now. Okay, and our guide for today, sort of our map through all this complexity, is a detailed article from FMCPA. We're going to use it to unpack Apertum's underlying technology, look at how its ecosystem is growing, the mechanics of its tokenomics, its unique governance system, and crucially, the challenges it seems to be facing right now.
Yeah, our mission here is basically to cut through the noise. We want to extract the most important insights from this material and help you get a solid handle on what Apertum is, how it works according to this source, and, well, why it's attracting so much attention. Think of this as like your fast track to being well informed on this specific project.
I have to say, I'm genuinely curious about this one. Any project entering the, let's face it, crowded layer one space claiming to tackle core blockchain constraints head on,
Yeah.
well, that immediately warrants a closer look, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And as we always say, understanding projects like Apertum, it really requires moving beyond just the initial hype. You need to examine the technical foundations, the operational structure they've actually put in place.
So let's start right there. Pertum launched, what was it, January 30th, 2025. What is this project at its core, as described in the material?
Okay, so at its heart, Apertum is a layer one blockchain. It's designed specifically as a subnet on Avalanche. And its primary goal, as they state it, is to provide a secure, scalable, and low-cost environment, one that's really optimized for dApps, decentralized applications, and various Web3 solutions.
And it seems like it's gained traction incredibly fast since January.
It really has. The material notes its rapid listing on major exchanges, LBank, Bitmart, MEXC, pretty much right after launch, and it highlights its community growth too, calling it one of the fastest growing this year.
That's remarkable speed. I mean, where did the project even come from? Did it just appear?
No, the conceptual work actually began much earlier, back in 2020. It was founded by a team of blockchain architects, people who set out specifically to address what they saw as limitations and infrastructure constraints in the existing blockchain platforms.
Okay, so that focus on constraints, that's just some core innovation, right?
Yeah.
What does the source point to as the key technological differentiator here?
Well, the material really emphasizes a revolutionary consensus protocol they've developed. It's called proof of finality, or PF. This is presented as like the cornerstone enabling their high performance.
Proof of finality,
Right.
PAF. Okay, what's the specific benefit this consensus mechanism is supposed to deliver?
So the PAF protocol is designed to enable extremely high transaction throughput. They're targeting up to 100,000 transactions per second. But crucially, the claim is that it achieves this speed and efficiency without making those typical trade-offs, the ones you often see in terms of network security or decentralization that plague other high TPS chains.
Right, 100,000 TPS is a huge target. A lot of layer ones are chasing that.
Right.
So its main purpose is essentially to be that fast, reliable base layer for adapts across different sectors.
Precisely. Its stated mission is to function as a robust infrastructure layer, supporting a wide range of dApps, everything from DeFi and NFTs to gaming and even enterprise solutions. And the native token powering all of this is APTM.
Got it. So what are the essential roles of this APTM token within the network? It's not just for speculation, presumably.
No, definitely not. APTM is multifaceted. It's used for covering transaction fees or gas fees across the network. It's required for participating in their on-chain governance system. It's staked to secure the network and earn rewards, of course. And it's also integrated into various incentive mechanisms designed to encourage adoption and development. The material really positions Apertum as gaining attention because of this integrated approach, tackling that classic blockchain trilemma: security, decentralization, scalability, all at the same time.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. How does it technically aim to achieve these pretty ambitious goals, especially that speed target? What does the architecture actually look like under the hood?
Yeah, the technical architecture is definitely highlighted as a significant component of their approach. It's described as an innovative, multi-layered structure.
And that P of consensus we talked about is right at the core of that.
Yes, exactly. The proof of finality mechanism is central to the design. It's intended to combine the strong security properties you usually associate with proof of stake models, but with high levels of efficiency. And this allows for near instant transaction finality. The report says just 1-2 seconds, while still maintaining strong security guarantees.
1 to 2 seconds. That's fast. How does it achieve that near-instant finality? Is it just a single validation step?
No, the material describes a two-phase validation process. First phase is called preliminary consensus. Here, a smaller subset of validators does a quick initial validation, gives you that immediate confirmation. Then the second phase is finality confirmation. This involves a broader, more decentralized set of validators cryptographically confirming the blocks with certainty, which, prevents forks. So it's designed to give users that quick certainty, but also ensure robust, decentralized confirmation in the end.
Okay, a two-step process,
Yeah.
speed and security. Got it. And you mentioned it's a multi-layered architecture.
Right, yeah, it's built on four distinct layers, designed for modularity and scalability. You've got the base layer, which handles core network functions, network topology.
Hmm.
Then above that is the consensus layer. That's where the PFF protocol is implemented and it coordinates the validators.
Okay, base, then consensus. What's next up the stack?
The third layer is the execution layer. This is where the smart contracts actually run. It's powered by the Apertum virtual machine, or AVM. Now, the AVM is designed for compatibility with existing smart contract languages like Solidity, which is obviously key for attracting developers, but it also includes some advanced features beyond standard EVM compatibility.
So developers familiar with Solidity could, in theory, migrate their stuff over pretty easily.
That's the implication, yeah. Lowers the barrier to entry significantly. And then the top layer is the application layer. This provides all the necessary interfaces, SDKs, APIs, developer tools, and they offer these in multiple programming languages, trying to make it easier for teams to build dApps.
Multi-language support, definitely a nod towards developer friendliness.
Okay, what about scaling specifically? How does it plan to hit that 100,000 TPS target? Is it just POF?
Well, POF is part of it, but another key technical innovation mentioned is dynamic sharding. This mechanism basically allows the network to automatically adjust its processing capacity based on real-time demand. It segments the network into multiple parallel shards that can process transactions concurrently. That's how you drastically increase throughput. And the material notes that the network state remains synchronized across these dynamic segments, which is important.
Dynamic sharding. Sounds complex, but probably necessary if you're aiming for that kind of throughput. Any other notable tech features mentioned?
Yeah, a couple more. They're incorporating zero-knowledge proofs, or ZKPs. This is highlighted for enhancing both privacy and scalability. It allows transaction validity to be verified without revealing the sensitive underlying data. This could open up possibilities for confidential transactions while still, leveraging blockchain's transparency where it's needed.
Yeah.
ZKPs, right? Privacy features are always a significant development. And what about connecting with other networks? Is it just its own isolated island?
No, they seem very focused on interoperability. They've built what's called a universal interoperability protocol. The goal here is to enable seamless communication and asset transfer with other major networks. Think Ethereum, Binance Smart Chain, Solana. So the material positions Apertum not just as like another competitor, but as an integrative component, aiming to enhance cross-chain compatibility across the whole ecosystem.
Building bridges, literally and figuratively. Okay, that makes sense. Any final technical advantage the source points out?
One more that's quite interesting, advanced data compression techniques used for the ledger. The material claims this reduces Steve requirements by up to 90% compared to traditional blockchains, which directly addresses that long-term challenge of blockchain ledger bloat.
Wow, a 90% storage reduction is substantial. Okay, so they've clearly built this sophisticated tech stack, but the big question is it translating into real-world use and adoption? Let's look at how the ecosystem is actually growing.
Right, and this is where the material points to some really rapid expansion, apparently driven by a strategy built on 5 key pillars.
5 pillars guiding ecosystem growth. Okay, let's hear about them. What's pillar number 1?
First up, the developer ecosystem. This seems crucial. The Apertum Foundation has committed a significant $100 million grant program specifically to incentivize and support teams building on the network. And this program is credited, according to the source, with attracting over 300 development teams already.
$100 million war chest for developers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely signals they're serious about attracting builders. What's the second pillar?
Second is enterprise adoption. They're actively forming strategic partnerships with industry leaders across various sectors. And the material specifically highlights collaborations with 2 Fortune 100 companies, exploring blockchain integration solutions powered by Apertum.
2 Fortune 100s. That's definitely noteworthy. Does the material give any hint about what kind of integrations they're looking at? Supply chain, finance.
Yeah, the source mentions areas like supply chain management and digital identity solutions in the context of these partnerships, suggesting Pretty concrete, practical use cases are being explored, not just theoretical stuff.
Interesting. Okay, pillar 3.
Third is research and innovation. They maintain formal collaborations with leading technical universities and research institutions, which helps ensure the project stays connected to, cutting-edge academic research and talent.
Keeping those ties with academia makes sense for long-term development, sure. Number 4.
Fourth pillar, community building. The material reports exponential growth in their community, now exceeding 500,000 members across various online platforms, which is pretty staggering. And they foster this engagement through initiatives like hackathons, developer conferences, local meetups, that sort of thing.
500,000 members in just a few months since launch. That is extremely rapid growth. Okay, and the final pillar, L4
The fifth one is institutional support. The project has received backing from prominent blockchain venture capital firms, which provides not just funding, obviously, but also strategic guidance and valuable network connections within the industry.
Right, so they're hitting developers, big enterprise, research, community grassroots, and institutional money. It sounds comprehensive. How is this strategy translating into measurable adoption, according to the source? Are there numbers?
Yeah, the material provides some key metrics that indicate substantial traction. It states that Apertum currently supports over 250 decentralized applications. The combined user base across these different applications apparently exceeds 2 million users. And, maybe most impressively, as of April 2025, the total value locked, or TVL, within Apertum's DeFi protocols reached $3.5 billion. The source really emphasizes this figure represents exponential growth just since January.
3.5 billion TVL in that short a time frame. Yeah, that certainly sounds exponential. What specific projects within that ecosystem does the material actually mention as examples?
It highlights several notable ones. There's Aperdex, described as a high-performance decentralized exchange leveraging Apertum's speed. Lendpool, which is a lending and borrowing protocol. MetaWorld, an expansive metaverse platform being built on it. And Identity Chain, which is a self-sovereign identity solution aimed at both individuals and enterprises.
That's a diverse set. Covers DeFi, gaming or metaverse, and enterprise identity solutions.
Exactly. And what's particularly insightful here, I think, is that the material shows this traction isn't just limited to one niche, like only DeFi. The adoption across DeFi, gaming, and enterprise suggests that the technical advantages Apertum claims, the speed, low cost, scalability, are actually translating into practical benefits, benefits that attract a variety of builders and users, which is a good sign.
Okay, let's switch gears then and talk about the economic engine behind all this activity. The APTM token itself. What are the specifics of its design? How is the supply managed? Let's look at the tokenomics.
Right. The APTM tokenomics are described in the material as being meticulously designed, aiming for long-term sustainability, value appreciation, and aligning incentives among all the network participants.
Okay, first things first. What's the total supply limit? In the capped?
Yes, it's a fixed total supply, capped at 2.1 billion APTM tokens. No more will ever be created.
2.1 billion.
Yeah.
Got it. How is that supply structured for distribution? Is it all out there already?
No, not at all. 100 million APTM were pre-minted and allocated to the Apertum Foundation. These are designated for purposes like marketing, getting those exchange listings, and providing initial network liquidity. The remaining 2 billion APTM are not all available at once. They're being gradually released into circulation through a mechanism the material calls the APTM mining bot protocol.
The APTM mining bot protocol.
Right.
Okay. And the material mentions halvings in relation to this. That sounds like Bitcoin terminology, but you said this is a proof of finality chain, not proof of work. How does that work?
Yeah, it's using the term halvings more by analogy, I think. It refers to programmed events where the rate at which new APTM is released through this protocol automatically decreases over time. According to the source, this reduction happens every time 125 million blocks are mined on the Apertum network. So it's a scheduled supply reduction tied to block production, designed to control inflation and create scarcity over time. Similar in principle to Bitcoin's halving schedule, but the underlying mechanism is completely different since it's not PoW mining.
Okay, so a supply reduction tied to block count, drawing a parallel to halving conceptually. Makes sense. And you mentioned deflationary aspects earlier. How does that fit in?
Yes, absolutely. Beyond just controlling the release of new tokens, there's a built-in deflationary burn mechanism. A portion of various fees generated within the Apertum ecosystem gets permanently removed from circulation. This includes transaction fees, trading fees on protocols like APRDEX, and even fees from integrated third-party services. So this ongoing burning directly counteracts the new supply being released through the mining bot protocol. The aim is to actually reduce the total circulating supply over the long term.
Interesting. So supply is added via the bot protocol, reduced periodically by these halvings, and constantly chipped away at by burning fees. What other uses does APTM have within the network economy besides governance and staking?
Well, as we mentioned, it's used for paying gas fees across the network for any transaction or smart contract execution. But additionally, the material notes that some third-party services built on Apertum actually require users to hold or use APTM tokens, maybe to unlock specific features, access premium tiers, that kind of thing, adds another layer of utility.
Right. And how is the release of that main chunk, the 2 billion tokens, managed to prevent, sudden market shocks or dumps?
The release schedule via the mining bot protocol is specifically designed as a gradual unlocking process. It's spread out over several years. The clear intention is to prevent large volumes of tokens from flooding the market all at once, which helps support price stability while still ensuring tokens become available for staking and network participation as the ecosystem grows.
That structured release combined with the burn mechanism.
Yeah, it sounds like a very careful attempt to balance growth incentives with supply control. Okay, now this project strongly emphasizes decentralization. You mentioned the DAO earlier. How does the community actually participate in shaping the future of Apertum? Let's explore their governance model a bit more. All right, Apertum implements what the source describes as a sophisticated on-chain governance system. It's managed through the Apertum Decentralized Autonomous Organization, or APRDO. And the fundamental principle is straightforward. Holders of the APTM token have the ability to propose, discuss, and ultimately vote on potential changes to the core protocol, ecosystem parameters, funding decisions, etc.
Okay, how does the proposal process work? Can literally anyone with one APTM token submit a proposal?
Not quite. The governance framework includes a clear proposal framework, and the material states that any token holder staking a minimum threshold of APTM currently specified as 50,000 tokens is eligible to submit an improvement proposal. Once submitted, these proposals then move through structured phases. There's community discussion, technical review, and then finally a formal voting period.
50,000 APTM. Okay, so there's a barrier to prevent spam, presumably. And how does the voting itself function? Is it just weighted simply by the number of tokens someone holds?
It's actually more nuanced than simple one token, one vote. Apertum uses a time-weighted voting mechanism. This means the participants' voting power is determined by combining two factors: the quantity of APTM tokens they have staked, and the duration for which those tokens have been continuously staked. This system is designed specifically to incentivize and reward long-term commitment to the network's security and governance, potentially reducing the influence of, say, short-term speculators or mercenary capital.
Rewarding long-term stakers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for stability. Is there anything else that affects voting power, especially for really sensitive decisions?
Yes, the material mentions that for certain sensitive decisions or major protocol upgrades, they utilize quadratic voting. Now, in this model, the influence a participant has doesn't scale linearly with the number of tokens they stake for that vote. Instead, it scales with the square root of their staked tokens committed to a particular vote. The source points out this is specifically intended to mitigate whale dominance, preventing a few very large token holders from having an outsized, disproportionate control over really critical decisions.
Quadratic voting. That's a really interesting mechanism to try and balance influence. I know other projects are exploring it too. What about token holders who maybe don't have the time or, frankly, the expertise to deeply evaluate every single proposal that comes up?
Good question. There is a delegation mechanism built in. APTM holders can choose to delegate their voting power to trusted third parties or representatives, people who are perhaps more actively involved in the governance process or have specific expertise. This allows for broader participation, even from less engaged holders, ensuring their stake still counts.
Okay, delegation makes sense. So once a proposal gets discussed, reviewed, voted on, and approved, is it just implemented immediately, or is there some kind of safeguard?
There's a safeguard. Approved major protocol changes are implemented through a graduated process with built-in circuit breakers, essentially. This allows the implementation to be monitored closely as it rolls out, and it provides a safety mechanism to pause or potentially even reverse changes if unforeseen negative consequences or bugs arise. And what the material really highlights about Apertum's governance is its dynamic structure. The governance parameters themselves, things like that minimum staking threshold for proposals, or the specific weightings in the voting mechanisms, or even the rules for quadratic voting, those are subject to governance votes too. The community can collectively decide to change the rules of engagement as the project evolves and learns.
Wow. Okay, so the rules about the rules can be changed by the community. That
Ah.
adds another layer of flexibility and decentralization. What types of decisions has this Aperdio actually made so far, according to the source?
Well, the examples given include things like adjustments to the network's fee structure, approval of significant ecosystem grant allocations from that big fund we mentioned, modifications to the staking reward formulas to fine-tune incentives, and updates to core technical parameters of the protocol itself. What Apertum seems to be aiming to demonstrate with this whole system is that decentralized governance can actually be a practical functioning system for collective responsibility and strategic direction, not just some theoretical ideal that doesn't work in practice.
And how active is the community participation in this governance system? Is it just a few whales voting?
Actually, the material highlights a notably high participation rate, especially compared to many other blockchain DAOs out there. It reports that approximately 68% of all staked APTM tokens are actively engaged in governance voting, which suggests a really strong level of community involvement and alignment among stakeholders, much higher than average.
68% participation is, yeah, that's a very high rate for on-chain governance. That's quite a compelling metric for a project launched just this year.
Definitely. And to facilitate this high engagement, they've apparently also implemented an intuitive governance portal designed to make the proposal and voting process accessible, even for less technical users. And they provide educational resources on how to participate effectively. Lowering the friction seems key.
All right, so we've looked at the tech, the ecosystem growth, the tokenomics, and this rather sophisticated governance model. It all sounds very promising on paper, or, well, in this article. But as we know, no project is without its challenges. What are the significant hurdles Apertum faces right now, according to the material?
Yeah, acknowledging the challenges is absolutely crucial for getting a realistic understanding of any project's potential path forward. And the material is actually quite explicit about several key obstacles they need to overcome.
Okay, lay 'em on us. What's the first major challenge listed?
First up is scalability limits. Remember that ambitious target of 100,000 TPS. Well, the material notes they have only reached around 25,000 TPS in testing environments so far. Now, achieving that full target capacity reliably and securely in a decentralized mainnet environment, that's a complex technical feat, especially involving the successful and secure rollout of those dynamic sharding features we talked about. There's still a gap there.
Right, that gap between testnet results and the mainnet target is definitely something to watch closely.
Yeah.
What other challenges are highlighted?
Second is cross-chain security. Their universal interoperability protocol and the bridges connecting Apertum to other networks. They're valuable for liquidity and reach, absolutely, but bridges inherently introduce new security vulnerabilities, potential attack surfaces.
Yeah.
The material points out, quite rightly, that bridge exploits are a known major risk in the crypto industry. Ensuring robust, attack-resistant bridge protocols is absolutely vital as more value starts flowing across these chains. One bad hack can be devastating.
Yeah, given the sadly long history of bridge hacks, that's
Yeah.
got to be a top concern. Okay, challenge number 3.
Third is developer adoption. Even with that big $100 million grant program and the developer-friendly tools, attracting a large, diverse pool of developers to build meaningful applications on a relatively new blockchain is always a common and significant hurdle. The material implies that Aperam, like basically all other emerging chains, needs to continuously provide strong incentives, comprehensive documentation, and really robust support to build that critical mass of applications before they can hope to hit truly mainstream user adoption. It's a chicken and egg problem.
It really is that perennial challenge of bootstrapping an ecosystem. What about dependencies on external data sources?
Ah, yes, that relates to Oracle dependencies. Many DeFi applications, for example, rely heavily on decentralized Oracle networks. Things like Chainlink to bring real-world data like asset prices onto the blockchain accurately and reliably. The material notes that these oracles themselves can be potential points of failure or manipulation if they're not designed and secured perfectly. And while Apertum might develop native Oracle solutions, those would bring their own set of risks related to security and potential centralization vectors. It's a tricky dependency.
Relying on potentially vulnerable external data feeds. Yeah, that adds another layer of risk. Are there any regulatory concerns mentioned in the source?
Yes, regulatory pressure is explicitly listed as a challenge. As regulatory environments around the world continue to evolve and potentially tighten, particularly concerning privacy features in DeFi, certain elements of Apertum's design, like those zero-knowledge proofs offering enhanced privacy, might attract scrutiny, especially in jurisdictions that decide to implement stricter controls on transaction privacy or financial surveillance.
Right. Privacy features are often a double-edged sword in the current regulatory climate. And finally, any other major challenge?
The last one mentioned is market volatility, just the inherent nature of the crypto market. Like all crypto projects, APTM's token value is subject to significant market swings, wild volatility. And this can impact key aspects of the project. Things like network security, because staking economics can change drastically. It can also potentially affect development funding if the treasury value fluctuates wildly, or impact the perceived stability and reliability of the platform for users and enterprises. The challenge is maintaining momentum, development, and resilience in what remains a highly unpredictable market environment. So, the material basically frames successfully navigating these specific obstacles scaling, bridge security, developer adoption, oracles, regulation, market swings is absolutely key. Key to Apern's potential to actually realize its ambitious goals. Adaptability and an effective response to these pressures will largely determine its future trajectory.
Okay, let's try and synthesize all of this then. What we seem to have in Apertum, based purely on this source material from FMCPAY, is a really ambitious project aiming to be a highly scalable, efficient, and developer-friendly Layer 1 platform.
Right, leveraging its Avalanche Subnet foundation, that EVM compatibility for easier onboarding, its unique proof of finality consensus mechanism, plus dynamic sharding for scaling, ZKPs for potential privacy enhancements, a demonstrably rapidly growing ecosystem driven by that five-pillar strategy, a carefully designed deflationary tokenomic model, and a notably active on-chain governance system featuring things like time-weighted and quadratic voting. It ticks a lot of boxes on paper.
But the source material makes it very clear that despite these strengths and its undeniably rapid initial growth, its long-term success is really contingent on its ability to effectively address those significant challenges we just outlined.
Exactly, particularly reaching its full scaling potential reliably and securely in production, ensuring the security of those vital cross-chain interactions via bridges, successfully navigating potential regulatory hurdles, especially around privacy features, and, crucially, sustaining the momentum in fostering that developer and user adoption needed for a truly vibrant, self-sustaining ecosystem. It's a long road ahead.
So zooming out for a second, why is understanding a project like Apertum important to you, our listener, even if you're not planning on building on it directly or investing in the APTM token specifically?
Well, because projects like Abertum, whether they ultimately succeed or fail, are operating right at the bleeding edge of blockchain technology today. They are actively experimenting with and implementing novel consensus models like PPOF, sophisticated scaling solutions like dynamic sharding, advanced privacy features using ZKPs, and evolving structures for decentralized governance. They're pushing the envelope.
So learning about their specific technical implementations, the strategies they use to try and build network effects, and the real-world challenges they inevitably encounter. It provides you with a valuable, concrete case study. It helps you understand what the cutting edge actually looks like right now, warts and all, and it gives you a better framework, better mental models for evaluating the claims and the potential of future blockchain projects you'll undoubtedly come across.
Yeah, it offers a detailed look at the ongoing, often difficult work required to push the boundaries of what these networks are capable of, and perhaps more importantly, what it really takes, beyond just cool tech, to build a functioning, widely adopted, decentralized ecosystem in the real world.
Which brings us to maybe a final thought to leave you with. Given this blend, we've discussed the advanced, maybe even complex technology like ZKPs and dynamic governance, running headlong into the very real, very immediate pressures of scaling reliably in production, managing cross-chain risk, and potential regulatory scrutiny. Can a project like Apertum truly balance that intense drive for bleeding-edge innovation with the fundamental, perhaps more mundane, need for stability, security, and broad practical adoption? That balancing act, that's a really interesting question worth mulling over, not just for Apertum, but for the entire space.